Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Nordic here. Welcome back to yet again another Tier Rank Tuesday, where today we have a very special one. It is time for my January 2025 tier list. We are going to be tier ranking all 32 teams in the National Hockey League, putting them into these 7 columns. I think they should be very obvious. Some of them will be, some of them may not be. But let's just hop straight into it here because we have a lot to go through. Starting off here now with the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks, yeah, I got to be honest, 20, 23, and 6 for 46 points. They are in probably the draft lottery season. They are not terribly far out, but they are bottom 5 in the NHL. I think it would be stupid to not put them in that column otherwise. Yeah, they are most likely going to stay around where they are. I feel like they have gotten a little bit better standings-wise, but I do feel like the on-ice product could definitely be a lot better, and I think that the Ducks really are going to move forward and try and make some of those changes, either at the trade deadline or during the offseason, and then come back the following year really locked in and ready to go, and hopefully this team will start improving drastically. I do think, though, their record is actually better than it's been in previous years. They're only 3 games below 500, but again, you do have 6 overtime losses in there as well, so you got to factor that in there too. Next up then, the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings with a record of 24, 21, and 5 for 53 points. Yeah, they are in the East Mosh Pit. Honestly, like, they have looked great down the stretch. They're winning a lot of games. They're only 2 points back of a playoff spot when it looked like it was going to be damn near impossible for them to get back in. They're literally that close. So, again, I think that it's January. I really don't know who makes it in that race. I have absolutely zero clue, guys. But I still do think at the same time, like, they are in that mosh pit. If they keep this up, they can maybe run away from it if all the other teams do start to fall off a little bit. But the problem is you're partly banking on teams to fall off a little bit. So that is never ideal whatsoever, 100%. Next up then, the Edmonton Oilers. They have a record of 32, 15, and 3 for 67 points. The Oilers are a cup team this year. I know some people don't like that, and I feel like a lot of it is just because people hate the Oilers. But they're 3rd in the league. They have one of the best points percentages of any team in the NHL. They are rolling right now, even after that bad start. Yeah, they're going to be back in contention. They may not make the Stanley Cup Finals again, but they will be a cup team and a team that gets far for sure, in my opinion, at the very least. Next up then, the Florida Panthers. 29, 19, and 3 for 61 points. It's very clear, and I'm just realizing this is spelled wrong. It's very clear that this Panthers team is not the same team they have been in previous seasons. It is insanely clear. I think that they are in these top 2 columns for sure, but I might not put them in the cup team column, honestly, and that might make people very angry, but this, like, just seeing how they've been, like, they're 10th in the league. No, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. They are still a cup team. They won the cup last year. They are still going to be a Stanley Cup contending team. I don't think they are as good as they are, or as they have been in other years, especially last year. Like, they got a lot worse this past season. They will still 100% be a cup team. They will contend for the Stanley Cup for sure, but I don't think by any means they are a necessary playoff. I wouldn't take them as my number 1 choice. So some Panthers fans may not like that, but I'm sticking with that opinion. Next up then, the Los Angeles Kings. They have a 26, 15, and 6 record for 58 points. They are currently 3rd in the Pacific Division. The thing is, though, is that Calgary's only 3 points back from them. I think it's still likely they make the playoffs. I don't know if they're a lock, though. Like, again, they have played a lot less games than everybody else, so maybe that is the reason why. I think they have the most games in hand of any team in the entire NHL, honestly. Yeah, now that I look at it, they do. but they are only, 4 points ahead of Vancouver, only 3 points clear of Calgary. So I think it's still likely they make the playoffs, but again, like it is a little bit of a tight race there. They do have some cushion and they do have games in hand, but again, games in hand only really matter when you win them. Like, yeah, they are a benefit right now, but what if you lose those next 2 to 3 games that you have in hand? Then you're SOL. So again, I think that the Kings are still likely to make the playoffs, but overall, we'll have to see. Next up, then the Minnesota Wild. We're going in a little bit of a weird order. These things are arranged very strangely than they usually are, but I guess we'll just go with it. The Wild this season, 29-17-4 for 62 points. They've definitely fallen off a little bit since that really good start to the season. They've fallen a little bit back down to reality. They're still a really good team. They do have Colorado, who is in a wild card spot, creeping up on them. Like, Colorado is hot right now, and they are on an absolute hot streak. For Minnesota, though, I'm going to put them because they are still like almost 10 points clear of that second wild card spot. They're still a lock, at least as of right now, in my opinion. Again, I don't necessarily know if they are the second best team in this division, but as well as that, too, you got to keep in mind they are only 1 point behind Dallas. So that also is, something you got to look at there as well. But yeah, Minnesota for me, I think they're still playoff locks. I don't think they're contenders just yet. I think this is going to be a pretty hard next couple of weeks for them because they lost Kaprizov. Now he's going to be out for 6 weeks. So, yeah, they're not in an ideal spot, and we'll have to see where things go from there. But, yeah, that was not something that was particularly nice to hear. Kaprizov not being in the lineup. Next up, then, the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens with a record of 24-20-5 for 53 points. They are also in the Eastern Conference mosh pit. Montreal looks a lot more impressive than I originally thought they were going to be, and I give them a lot of credit where it's due. They proved me wrong a heck of a lot this season. So, yeah, I think they are in that mosh pit. Again, they are literally tied with Detroit. I'd be stupid to put them even lower than they are. Again, in the race is actually primarily just for the Western Conference teams. I may put 1 or 2 East teams in there, but yeah, right now those teams are just in that absolute mosh pit that is that conference right now. Next up, the Nashville Predators. Nashville, they've been a little bit better recently, but they're still 18-23-7 for 43 points. They are only like 5 games below 500. If they win 5 in a row, they're back at 500. But it is still going to be a massive climb for them to really get back into this race. Again, with 43 points, they are like, they need like 15 points to get up there, up to Calgary's second wild card spot. It's still doable. I'm not going to put, I kind of have to. I have to put them in draft lottery season. If the Ducks are in draft lottery season, I have to put the Preds in draft lottery because they're literally next to the Ducks in the standings. So it'd be stupid for me to put a team that's below the Ducks in playoffs, unlikely. But again, you guys get what I'm kind of saying. It's still very unlikely they make the playoffs. Who knows though? Maybe a first overall pick or a high draft pick might help Nashville in the future and might change things completely there. Like, let's say they do get the first overall pick and pick James Higgins or Porter Martone, which it does look like that's happening right now. But if they do end up winning like a bunch of games in the second half of the season, then I don't know. But we'll have to see there with what happens with the Nashville Predators. Next up, then, the New Jersey Devils. The Devils with a record of 28-18-6 for 62 points. The Devils are locks. They might even be a cup team. Honestly, I think that they are still a really good team. They lose Markstrom, but they still should be a lock to make the playoffs. Again, they're tied with Minnesota, so it'd be stupid for me to put them anywhere else. Again, though, you may argue that the Devils are a cup contender, but we'll have to see what happens come playoffs. Again, I feel like the misconception with cup contenders for some people is like they'll put teams up here, like they'll put like Washington or like the Devils up here, and just in my opinion, like they haven't shown that they can be a cup contender. Honestly, like a team like Edmonton, they've been into the finals. Florida's been into the finals. I'll back my case up there in a little bit, but kind of what I see when I look at cup teams, even though there are some teams in playoff locks who could definitely win the Stanley Cup. Next up, then, the New York Islanders. The Islanders with a record of 21-20-7 with a 49 points. They are about 6 points back. They aren't necessarily in the mosh pit, but they're in the race. They're still in the race, contending for a playoff spot. you could honestly classify them as still being in the mosh pit, but the mosh pit for me is the teams that are within like 2 or 3 points of it. And there are like at least 5, 6, 7 teams that are in that. The Islanders are almost there, but I think at least as of right now, they're in the race to make it into the playoffs for me. The New York Rangers, 24, 21, and 4, 52 points. They are in that Eastern Conference mosh pit, 100%. Again, the Rangers, they had a really big fall off at the end of last month, but now at the beginning of this coming month, they are only like 3 points back of a playoff spot. So yeah, they can definitely jump in there, and honestly, they might make the playoffs. And if you're Washington, realistically, who the Caps are the team that is the first place in this Eastern Conference, are you really saying to yourself, do I really want to play the Rangers in the first round? Do I really want to play the Lightning in the first round? I don't know about that. So we'll have to see there what happens with that. But the Rangers are a part of that Eastern mosh pit. Same with the Boston Bruins. These next few teams here are a part of this mosh pit. Yeah, Boston is in the wild card spot right now, 25, 20, and 6 for 56 points. They're tied with Ottawa for 30 in the Atlantic, but they're also in that first wild card spot. So, again, you guys know that I'm not really buying into Boston that much. In my opinion, I'm not really buying into them. I don't think they're as good as they've been in previous years. They've won enough games under Sacco and are going to be, probably 500 until the freaking playoffs. So they'll probably make it in, but they're going to be first-round exits, in my opinion. So, yeah, not really that high on Boston this year. Maybe in the offseason they can retool and try and make things better. But at least as of right now, in my personal opinion, I'm not fully bought into this team whatsoever. Next up, then, the Ottawa Senators. The Senators are also a part of that Eastern Conference mosh pit. Again, maybe I'll put these in the specific order at some point. But, yeah, again, I don't think that... I think Ottawa might actually make it. Like, it was actually thought for a while that it was going to be those two wildcard spots battling. But now that third spot for the Atlantic Division is just completely up for grabs. So, again, I think that... we'll have to see there what happens with the Senators, but they're winning enough games. They have a very respectable record. They're almost 6 games. They're 6 games above 500. Yeah, they look good, and hopefully that continues for sure. The Philadelphia Flyers, 23, 22, and 6 for 52 points. They're only 3 points out. They're also in that mosh pit. Yeah, I think that for sure. With the Flyers, they're still in it. I don't think that they are going to make it, but they're still in it. They're winning enough games to put them in the race, but they're losing enough games to keep them still so far away. Whenever they get close, they just crash and burn, and whenever they get so far away, they'll go on a hot streak and get back in. So it's really been on and off this entire season from Philadelphia. So again, we'll have to see there where they go from here. Next up, then, the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins 20, 24, and 8 for 48 points. Yeah, it's I'm going to make a change. I'm going to put the Penguins in playoffs unlikely. I'm going to put the Isles in the wild card race. That should have been what it was before. I think that's all of the teams except for a few that are going to be in the mosh pit. But yeah, at least as of right now, like, this is the teams in there. I'm going to put the Islanders in there because I think they're still in it. I don't think it's fair to put them in the race, even though they're still a few points back from the other teams. The Penguins, though, for me, are in the unlikely spot. I don't think they are likely to make the playoffs. Again, they are only 1 point back of the Islanders, who are in the mosh pit. But in my opinion, I just don't think they're going to make it. They've lost a lot of games in a row. This team is just clearly not good enough. Again, it's complicated under Sidney Crosby, to the point where you want to rebuild, but you can't really rebuild. So you kind of just have to be mid forever. But yeah, right now the Pittsburgh Penguins for me are in playoffs unlikely, and I just can't see anybody else putting them in the playoffs. Like, I don't see them. For them to make the playoffs, they have to jump all of these teams. Almost all of these teams you have to jump. So yeah, no, I am not leaning on that whatsoever. I think that it's super unlikely for them to make the playoffs. Again, you could say the same thing for the Islanders, but the Islanders are rolling right now. So it'd be hard for me to, really gauge that, because I think the Islanders are going to battle all the way to the end because it's Lou Lamoriello, but I don't think the Pens make it. I could see the Islanders making it because they have the experience. Some of these teams might fall off, but yeah, at least as of right now, the Pens are in playoffs unlikely. Next up, then, the San Jose Sharks. They are in the draft lottery season. Again, they are, I think, either tied No, they are the second worst team in the NHL. It's been fun this year with Macklin Celebrini and watching that team play, but it's very clear that they are not a playoff team. They are still a draft lottery team. They will be for maybe 2 or 3 more years. But at least as of right now, it seems like it's a fun time there in San Jose, despite the losing. And that's good. You want to create a positive environment even with the losing going on, which for a lot of teams is very difficult. But hey, I think that Seattle or San Jose's done a good job at that for sure. Seattle Kraken, they are just 1 point ahead of Anaheim. They have had not the most ideal season there either. I still think they can make the playoffs, but it's unlikely for me. I think it's still super unlikely that they break in. Again, I think that there might actually be a legitimate shakeup there in Seattle, and we might see players get moved and maybe general managers getting fired. Again, that's just me kind of, talking out of my butt there. But again, I do think that I don't think they make it. Just in my opinion, I don't think they make it. St. Louis Blues, they are 23, 24, and 4 for 50 points. They're 5 points back of the Calgary Flames. They're in the race. They're in the race for sure. I think that they are still there. They are still contending. They will. I don't think it's likely they get into a playoff spot, but I think they still can definitely make the playoffs for sure. But again, you have to jump Vancouver, you have to jump Calgary. It is very close, but again, they've proven with a couple of these losses they've had over the last couple of weeks that the Montgomery effect may have worn off, and this team just may not be that good on paper to really get there, in my opinion. But again, we'll have to see. Next up, then, the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning are also a part of this Eastern Conference mosh pit. They are currently in the second wildcard spot, 26, 19, and 3 for 55 points. I thought for a while that, that they were going to lock into that third Atlantic spot, but they started losing a lot of games. They've had a rough stretch these last couple of weeks, and I think that it's shown in the standings and it's shown on the ice. And now they are a part of this 7-team mosh pit that is going on there right now. So, yeah, I think that Tampa's still in it. If I had to pick 2 teams, Tampa would probably be one of them to make the playoffs. But, again, we'll have to see, as I've been saying a lot in this video. All right, Toronto Maple Leafs here up next. The Maple Leafs have a record of 30, 18, and 2 for 62 points. They are locks to make the playoffs, but I am not leaning towards a cup contender. I am not leaning towards that whatsoever. In my opinion, I don't think that they're as good as their record says. I feel like they've had a lot of games this season and a lot of times where they just don't look good. They don't look like a good team. I do think they're better under Craig Berube, but it feels like the same issues are there with the Leafs as they've been in previous years. And you know what that is? That is quite literally just the mentality, and it's the players. Not the coach, not the staff, not any of that. It's the players, if that's the case. If they lose again in the first round, I am really curious what they're going to do. I am really curious. And you know what they're probably going to do? They're probably going to bring everyone back, because that's what they love to do. Utah Hockey Club up next, 21, 21, and 7 for 49 points. Yeah, they're in the race. Again, they're a little bit further back than other teams. They're 6 points back of Calgary. They are only 1 point behind St. Louis. Yeah, I'd say they're in the race. They're competing for a wild card spot, I would say. I don't know if they make it necessarily, but yeah, I'd say they're in the race still for sure. Vancouver Canucks here up next. The Canucks have a record of 22, 17, and 10 for 54 points. They are 1 point back of Calgary. They are in the race, but again, I'm like, I don't know about that one, Chief, because I feel like they are being saved by those overtime loss points. I think they have the most OT loss points of any team in the National Hockey League, which is very surprising considering the fact that you have some teams who are overtime merchants. They have the most overtime losses of any of them. And yeah, I think those 10 points are really saving them right now. Because again, I know that it's different, but if you take those 10 points away, they are in Nashville. They are like down here. Like they are in that Nashville territory. But those overtime loss points they've gotten in extra time have really saved them. But again, you could say the same thing for a lot of teams around the NHL. Like they could be really lower than they are. But still, I think that those overtime loss points play a big factor in why they are still in the race, in my opinion. Buffalo Sabres up next. Again, weird order. I don't know why it is like this. Sabres are in draft lottery season. It is quite unfortunate to see that they are still not getting to the level that we thought they were going to. They are just still not as good as we want them to be, and it's become clearly very obvious that there might be more changes coming, and we might see another 3 to 4 years of them being the way they are, and by then you get to the end of that, it's like 20 years of not being in the playoffs. So I'm going to stop beating down on Buffalo, but yeah, they're another draft lottery team. But we've learned that giving them a first overall pick doesn't really necessarily work all the time. So, yeah. Next up then, the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights have a actually pretty good record of 31, 15, and 4 for 66 points. However, this stretch they've been on these last couple of games has been pretty lackluster, but I still think they are cup contenders. You know, this team was really good up until this little bit of a soft stretch they've been on. I think they are going to win they can win a Stanley Cup. Not they are going to win a Stanley Cup. But again, this team has proven that they are good. They are a good hockey team. They're able to win, and they won the Cup 2 years ago, and I think solely for that reason, they, in my opinion, are for sure a Cup team. Next up, then, I have the Washington Capitals. I think this Caps team can win a Cup. I think that they definitely can, honestly. With the way that they are playing, they deserve to be in the Stanley Cup conversation. They are first in the Eastern Conference by a very large margin. They are absolutely playing at such an incredible level right now. They look like they can 100% win a Stanley Cup for sure. Same for the Winnipeg Jets. I think both those teams, if they add the right assets to the trade deadline, they could go for a run. They could go on a legitimate run. I don't know if they win the Cup because, again, you're competing with a lot of other teams there, but I still do think that they can win a Cup as well. And I would say there's at least 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 teams in the NHL that could win a Stanley Cup. Maybe even more, to be honest with you. Like, I really do see these 5 teams up here in the top columns possibly winning Cups within the next, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 years or this coming season. Next up, then, the Calgary Flames. Even though, like, they are in a playoff spot, they're still in the race. They're still battling for that final wild card spot. Again, I think that it's a little bit different than the Eastern mosh pit for them because I still think, in my opinion, they can still very well miss the playoffs. Again, they're 1 point ahead of Vancouver. They are only, again, like 5 points ahead of St. Louis. So, you know, again, I think they're still in the race. I wouldn't call them like a lock or like a likely team to make it. Just right now, it is way too early to tell, in my opinion. Carolina Hurricanes up next. They are also a Cup team, in my opinion. The add of Mikko Rantanen really makes this team good. And I think that add is absolutely perfect. By almost any stature. That is a great add for sure. And takes this team from a team that I would have likely put them like down here to honestly a Cup team. So yeah, the Hurricanes have earned that remark. Hopefully they will be able to go on a run in the playoffs, and hopefully down the stretch here with Rantanen, they will play as good as we know they can. A couple more teams left. The Chicago Blackhawks, they are also in the draft lottery season. I do think that the Blackhawks, they're struggling. They're not playing good. Again, we knew this was going to happen. We knew they were going to be towards the bottom of the league. And yeah, it's another year of that. And I just think that overall, you know, it sucks, but hopefully things will get better in the future. Colorado Avalanche, they are in a wild card spot right now. I'd say they are likely to make the playoffs. I'm not putting them as a lock because, again, they aren't that far ahead of all these other teams, but I think they still are likely to make the playoffs for sure. I do think they are still really good, but I feel like they did get weaker after the Rantanen trade. So, yeah, they kind of bumped down a little bit. Normally, I put them up here, but I think that I'm not as high on them as I was when they had Rantanen. Next up then, Columbus Blue Jackets. They are the final team that is in this absolutely Eastern Conference mosh pit. Honestly, again, I love how they played. I love how they've been this season. They're tied for a spot right now. It's still January, though, as I can say for a lot of these other teams. Like, I could really very well see the Blue Jackets falling off, the Islanders falling off, the Flyers falling off a cliff, the Canadiens falling off a cliff, the Red Wings falling off a cliff. I could see that all happening. But again, at this point right now, that is the absolute mosh pit. That is the Eastern Conference. And then finally, the Dallas Stars. I honestly, in my opinion, don't think the Stars are as good as they've been in previous seasons. They're still a good team, 63 points, 31-17-1. I still think they are a really good team. I wouldn't necessarily consider them a cup contender. I think they need to fix up issues on their blue line. But overall, I do think they look like an absolute playoff lock right now. And that's the tier list. I think I might make some changes, so I'm going to pause this real quick and go make the changes if there's any that I decide to make. I'm just going to stare at this for a couple of minutes and try and make some decisions. And after looking at it, I got to be honest, I think I pretty much agree with everything that's on this list. Again, you could change the order of all these teams if you wanted to. Like, you could put the Islanders at the back. You could put the Bruins over here, the Flyers up here, over here, over here, over here. Again, like, the order for me doesn't really matter that much. I think that it's pretty much, general consensus that, these teams are in these tiers. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do I have too many cup contenders? Should there be some more teams in the East that are just not in the playoffs unlikely? What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like the video down below. Please do subscribe if you're new. That is yet again another Tier Rank Tuesday. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.